Chelek Chavdaled, Parshas Shoftim, Sicha Gimel. We are learning today L'schus Yosef Shlomo ben Risha for the Refuah Shlomo Kreva Tekif Umiyad Mamish. We're discussing the pasuk Ki Ha'adam Eitz Hasada. What is the comparison between the human being and the tree of the field? Afin pasuk Ki Ha'adam Eitz Hasada frag the Gemara. V'Ki Ha'adam Eitz Hasadahu. The Gemara asks. The pasuk says that the man is the tree of the field. So the Gemara says, is a person a tree? Unfar Emfert, and the Gemara answers, Ella mishum dichsiv. In one pasuk in this parsha it says that you should eat from it and you should not cut it down. Uchsiv, and the next pasuk says, this tree you should destroy and you can cut it. How does it work? Do you cut it or do you not cut it? Says the Gemara, Im Talmud Chacham Hagunhu, if he is a worthy Talmud Chacham, a fitting Talmud Chacham, Mimenu Seichel, you should eat from him. As Rashi says, L'moidei menu, learn from him. And don't cut him down, don't run away from him. If not, if the Talmud Chacham is not a Hagun, not a worthy individual, you should destroy it, meaning Surmei alav, stay away from him, says Rashi, v'charata, and this is something that you should cut. Davon verstehen. So we have to understand, how did the Gemara answer the question? Von dem was the Gemara fragt, who is muchach, from the fact that the Gemara asks, is a person a tree? It's obvious as the Gemara nemton. It's obviously the Gemara is taking the approach ados was der pasuk vergleicht an Adam Eitz Hasada. The fact that the pasuk is comparing a person to a tree is nicht bloß weil Eitz Hasada dient wie a moshel von welchem wir können verstehen eine oder etliche von die meiles und tchunas shel Adam. It doesn't mean that the pasuk is using the tree as a metaphor to be able to understand some or all of the person's qualities. One or some of the person's qualities. It's not a mashal. Because if it was just looking at it at the comparison of a few minor details, then the whole question doesn't begin, is a person a tree? We're not comparing a person to a tree in its entirety. We're just comparing some details. And there are some details which you can use to compare a tree and a person. So if it was just about the details, then the Gemara wouldn't have asked the question in the first place. Nor as an Adam is Eitz Hasada. An Eitz drikt uis nit blois tailwise oder toffel dicke praten von dem Adam. The pasuk is telling us that a person is a tree. The tree doesn't just show some or secondary details, aspects of the person, nor die ganze Sach von Adam, the entire person, ha'adam Eitz Hasada, is a tree. So this is how the Rebbe understands the pasuk. And therefore, the Rebbe is going to ask, in that case, how did the Gemara's answer help? Before we get to the actual questions, the Rebbe strengthens the point that there's more to the connection of the person and the tree. We can also take this from another angle. The fact that we don't say Tachrun and Chamisha Asar B'Shvat, which is Rosh Hashanah Loilanis, it is the Rosh Hashanah for trees, and yet we, the people, are not saying Tachrun. There's a minig to eat fruit from a tree on this day on Chamisha Asar B'Shvat. And in the Achreinim, this is connected with the fact that a person is compared to the tree of the field. If it was only a metaphor, that wouldn't be a sufficient explanation why the person should celebrate the trees Rosh Hashanah. Is there fun move on? But from the fact that we don't say tachrun, from the fact that we eat fruit on that day, and we're celebrating the Rosh Hashanah of the trees, it's obviously clear to us as the Adam Eitz Hasada main canal, as the Adam is Eitz Hasada. When the pasuk says that the person is the tree of the field, the pasuk is saying that the person is a tree. Which is why the Rosh Hashanah of the tree is connected to the person, and the person celebrates it and observes it. So what we see so far is that there is a deeper connection between the tree and the person, which is what the pasuk means when it says Ha'adam Eitz Hasada is nit verstandig. But if that's the case, it's not understood. Aleph, how does that answer the question? By saying that if it's a worthy Talmud Chacham, you could learn from him. First of all, the fact that we're comparing to a Talmud Chacham, that just like if it's a good fruit, you would eat it. If it's a bad fruit, you wouldn't eat it. So too, if the Talmud Chacham is a good person, is a worthy person, then you could learn from him. Otherwise, not. You're still using it as a mashal and not explaining how the person is the tree. Beis unachmer, not in ein prat. It's only in one detail. The fact that you're comparing the person to the tree, and the fact that if it's a Talmud Chacham Hagun, only then can you eat from him, or can you benefit from him, can you learn from him, that's only one aspect of the tree and the person. So we go back to our original question, which the Gemara asks, is it for this one detail? That's A, is just a mashal, and B, it's only in one detail. Can you truly call a person a tree because of this? Beis, and the second question that we have, wie passt bichlal zu mitar sein meiles ha'adam min ha'medaber der mitvas is a eitz ha'sada and hat tchunas von tzemeach. How is it appropriate? How does it fit to be able to describe what's the greatness of the person, what's the quality of this person, which the person obviously is the highest of all creations, the fact that he's from the category of medaber, of those who speak, which refers to humans. How are you describing him that he has the qualities of a tzemeach, of something that grows in the ground? It seems like the tzemeach aspect is actually belittling him. It's true that a human being does have the aspect of things that grow. Especially like, for example, hair and nails are constantly growing on the person. If we're looking for things in the person that are not medaber, then the fact that he's alive, just to clarify, this is going to come up in a moment, but we know that in the creation of the world there are four categories: doimim, the inanimate; tzemeach, things that grow; chai, animals, things that are alive; and medaber, things that can speak, the human being. So now we're trying to describe the maila, the special quality of the human being. So we say, well, he can grow. He's like a tzemeach. So 1 second. If we are going down to the other categories, he's also a chai. He's also a living being. Beis v'iker, nit in dem b'stet me'alas adam. Even if you had the chai or the tzemeach, the fact that a person's hair grows or his nails grow, that does not describe the uniqueness of the human being. How does the whole thing fit? How does it fit to say, because the person is the tree? Why is that the greatest compliment that you can give to a person, that he's a tree? Number one, in question Aleph, we asked, what makes him a tree? Question Beis, we're asking, why are we using such a lower level of creation to describe this higher level of creation, the human being? So in Sif Beis, the Rebbe is going to take us on a journey to begin to understand what is unique about Tzemeach. What is unique about things that grow in the ground versus other creations that the Eibishter created, and ultimately we're going to bring that over to understand that in the human being as well. Base. The unique quality, what distinguishes the plant kingdom, the Gabe Midaber Chai, in comparison to the human world or the animal world. Things that grow do not cover up, do not conceal their true life source. It is constantly connected through its roots to its source, to the power in the ground that makes things grow, which gives it life and makes it grow. Then when you pull out a plant from the ground, it's not a plant anymore. It was a plant. It's very beautiful, but it begins to die. It's not growing anymore. The actual word semeach doesn't mean plant. The actual word semeach comes from the tzmicha, which means that it grows. Once it's not on the ground anymore, it stops growing. By the animal kingdom or by the human being, we don't find that they must constantly be connected to their source, to their roots. They're not connected to the ground. From where even the animals and even the humans originally were created from, as the pasuk says, everything begins from the ground. But now, but after it was born or after it was brought into being, It's not anymore connected to its source, to its root, which gave birth to it. Euch der Mosen von Chaim Medaber is in an Eufen, as it darf nicht stehen in a Chibur mit dem Mocker von the Mosen. Also, the sustenance of the animal or of the human is in a way that it does not need to be in constant connection with the source of the sustenance. For example, a baby, a fetus, in the womb of the mother needs to be constantly connected to the mother in order for it to be nurtured. But once it's born, it becomes an independent being, and its food source is not connected to it. It needs the food, but it's not constantly connected to it. But whereas by the plant, the plant is constantly connected to the power that makes it grow that's in the ground. Now, the Rebbe is going to point out parenthetically that in the animal kingdom, there is one exception to this, and that's the fish. Fish have to constantly be in the water, connected to their source of life in order to live. And the Rebbe is going to clarify how that's not a contradiction to what he's saying till here. We find something very similar by the fish. As they must constantly be in the water, which is the source of their vitality. When they are removed from the water, immediately they die. On the contrary, it's in a way it's even more connected than the things that grow, than the plants. Their entire being, the entire fish, is in the water, which is the source of their life. So seemingly, it's not about Chai and Sameach. So the Rebbe answers, yes, it is. Aber here, in truth, this last point that was made is actually the deeper point. It's actually the answer to the question. In dem gufa is the chiddush betzemech legabe dagim. In this itself, there's still a chiddush. There's still something unique about the things that grow the plants over the fish. As euch when sie wachsen al pnei adam, chutz li mekayram. That even when they are growing above earth, the actual plant is outside of its source, which is in the earth. They're above the earth. Including trees that are taller than 3 tvachim and taller than 10 tvachim, that are various different halachic measurements that create an independent entity. And some are way higher than 10 tvachim. They constantly remain connected to their roots that are in the ground, and through the roots, with the power of growth that is in the earth. So the fish, they are connected to the Makar Chayusam, but they themselves have to still be inside. The Tzemeach is unique because on the one hand it grows out of the ground, and yet it constantly remains connected to the ground. The oid, and there's another distinction. But dogim is the dog prati klan verbunden mit sein Makar Chayus prati. But the fish, the individual fish is not connected to its personal source of life. The fish can be moved. It can move from this water. It could go into a fish tank. Even from a river to a sea, which the river is not salt water. The sea is salt water, so it has different types of waters. It can be moved around as long as it's into the water. Whereas by something that's growing in the ground, you can't move it around. It needs to be constantly connected to its source of life. So the bottom line so far is that what's unique about Semeach is that they are constantly connected to their source, and even unlike fish, even when they grow out of the ground, even when they're growing up tall and proud trees, they still need to remain connected to their source in the ground. In dem gufa is farana yisen mailin etzasada ilonas like under its machem. And Siv Gimel, the Rebbe is going to say that within the world of Tzomeach, within the world of the plant kingdom, there is going to be something unique about trees that are different than all the other things that grow in the ground. And it's machem vitvu priyadam v'keitz. There's other things that grow in the ground, such as grains or other fruits that grow from the ground. Do not remain in their existence as a plant that is connected to the ground from year to year. They cease to exist. Today you have something growing, and then as the season changes, whatever the season is, it ceases to exist. Whereas the trees continue to produce fruit each and every single year, they can withstand various different changes of weather, of temperature, of summer and winter, and their existence does not stop. They continue to exist despite all the changes that go on around them. They continue to exist. But das weist auf a gar starken Chibur mit Nokach HaYusam. This represents the fact that they have a very deep and strong connection with the source of their vitality. Was git in Ze'arana Tekev Gadol, which gives them the strength of nit nispol werden von Shinui Hazman, did not be affected by the changes of the times of the seasons. Bleiben b'kiyumam und euch wachsen mishon l'shana, that not only they remain in existence, they actually grow from year to year. A tree continues to grow every single year. It gets bigger and bigger. It can get taller. The stump of the tree gets wider and wider. It continues to grow. So in Siv Gimel, the Rebbe is making the point that within the world of Tzomeach, within the world of the plant kingdom, trees are unique, that they are deeply connected, or even deeper connected, with the source of their life, which is why they continue to grow every year. They continue to remain in existence despite the fact that everything around them is changing. So we spoke about the eitz, the Tzomeach and the eitz. Now let's talk about the Adam. The Adam is an Olam Katan. The person, the human being, is a microcosm. Punkt wie der Olam Gadol is eingeteilt in 4 sugim, and therefore, just like in the macrocosm, it is divided into the 4 categories which we mentioned earlier: Doimim, the inanimate; Tzomeach, the plant; Chai, the animal; und Medaber, the human. So too by a human being, and also by the spirituality of the human being, also has these 4 categories, which is explained at length in various places in Chassidus. We're not going to focus on all 4 today. Today we're going to focus on Tzomeach and Chai, the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, as it is in the human being. Ukiyodua, as it is known. As the midas from the mention, the person's midas, the person's character traits are called the tzemeach, the element of plant, of growth that exists in the person. While in the midas is because midas have this concept that they grow, they mature. A person's midas, his character, it matures with age, with time. So just like midas grow, therefore they are called tzemeach within the person. And to clarify, what do we mean that it grows? In koyach ha-seichel is faran nit blois der inyan von smicha mekatnos legadnos. In the power of seichel, you also have the idea. Seichel also matures. A person's intellect, a person's ability to rationalize, it also matures as time goes on. So, but the seichel doesn't just have the ability to grow, nor eich der inyan von chai. Seichel also goes into the same category as chai, as something that's alive. What makes something that it's alive? The fact that it's movable. The fact that it not is movable, that it can be moved, but that it moves itself. It goes from place to place. Like an animal that can move from place to place. Similarly, seichel is not defined and not limited to one nature. Seichel is in Yonitz verstehen azach, nit wie im Wilzach. Nor wie die Sache is. Seichel doesn't mean that I figure it out as I want it to be. Seichel means that I figure out what it is as it is. And therefore, Seichel has to move around. Today, Seichel has to explore Chesed. Tomorrow, Seichel has to explore Gvura. Even the person likes Chesed, but if the thing that it's exploring is a Gvura-related thing, then the Seichel has to explore Gvura. That's the point. The point is that seichel doesn't have is not bound to itself. The seichel explores, and therefore the seichel, it moves from one idea to another idea at whatever it is that it's exploring. And now if you're going to discuss something, how should we approach this? In one area, the conclusion of the seichel would be that we have to take the approach of chesed. And then the same seichel could reach, with regards to another topic, could reach the conclusion that we have to approach this from a gvura perspective. Obviously, etc., etc. So we see that the seichel is not bound, it's not anchored in one specific character trait, in one specific area. It moves around. Whereas the midas, as they are inherently, are bound to their own nature. The midah of chesed remains in the realm of chesed. It's just that midas grow, they mature, but they mature within their own element. And that's why midas are called tzomeach, because their uniqueness is the growth. Whereas Seichel is called Chai because Seichel moves around. And the uniqueness of Chai is that it can move around. Okay. Now, so we spoke about one aspect of the Tzemeach and the person, the fact that the Tzemeach it stays in one place versus Chai that moves around. But there was another aspect that we said, the difference between Tzemeach and Chai. And that was that Tzemeach is constantly connected to its source of life, and Chai is not constantly connected to its source of life. So in Sifhei, we're going to see that in the Nefesh Adam. Just like Tzemeach in the macrocosm is unique with the fact that it's constantly connected to its source, is similarly, when it comes to the Tzemeach in the person, which are the Midas, as we explained, as they have an advantage over Seichel, Midas specifically are constantly connected to their source, which is Pnimius Nefesh Adam. We'll get to Seichel in a minute, but let's keep on going on this topic. The idea that Midas are connected to the essence of the person, the Pnimius Nefesh Adam. This is why Midas are so intense. Biza says it's and so difficult for them to change locations, to change their approach, to become different. Similar to what we said before, with regards to the trees, that they don't change just because the environment around them, the atmosphere around them is changing. Someone who's naturally a kind person, it's very difficult for that person to become a person of gevura, of severity. And similarly, in the other way, if a person is by nature a person of gevura, it's very hard to become a person can do chesed, but to change his midah, to become an isha chesed, is very difficult. Now, if you're going to wonder, 1 second, hey, what hope do we have? So the Rabbi clarifies in the brackets that it is doable, it's just hard. Well, the higher, as Afal became Meglech, nevertheless, it is still possible to change. Chotches is nitragel, even though it's not common, nital derech harev, and certainly not in the majority of cases. A mensch can sich misgaber sein mit sein seichel auf teva midos. If a person can use his seichel to overcome the nature of his midos. Because there can say mishana sein von tonal and a person does have the power to change, to transform his character traits from the negative to positive. Azoivi by ilonis, just like by the trees, which is the parallel here is durch der Tirchi Yesera von Oiker sein Zemim Kaimam. If a person puts in the extreme effort to uproot the trees from their place, and then replant them somewhere else, they can grow in the new place. And sometimes even better and stronger than where they were in the first place. So it is possible. It just takes a lot of hard work. So it is possible to change one's midos. It just takes a lot of hard work. So midos not only what we said in Siv Dalid are midos not changeable, midos are also very connected to their source, which is why they're very difficult to change. Und das Gufe ist echt der Tam, was Seichel wird nicht mugdrinet in Teva Adam, and for the same reason, Seichel is not defined by the person's nature. As we see, that a person can grasp something, can understand and grasp something that's totally against his nature. A person can be a person of chesed, but can still understand something that's total gvura. While the seichel chai shebe'adam is begoli nitaz mechuber tzashash benefesh, because the seichel of the person, which is the chai, the animal, is in a revealed way not as connected to its source. Punkt vi chai in der elam gadol, just like the animal in the macrocosm, which is not connected to its source. Okay, so let's just break this down. In Siv Beis, the Rebbe clarified that Tzemeach A is connected to its source. B does A it's connected to its source, and B it doesn't move. And then in Siv Gimel, the Rebbe added that in trees, this is even on a higher level because the trees have an even deeper connection to their source. In Siv Daled, the Rebbe spoke about the fact that midos don't change so much, but seichel does change. In Sifhei, the Rebbe said that midas is connected to its source, which is why it doesn't change. And Seichel is not so connected to its source, which is why it does change. And Seichel is not defined or limited to the person's teva. So we understand how it works in the in the tree. You understand how it works in the person. Now let's put the two and two together. Sivav, der mitzvah verstehen, was der Pasuk sagt, ki adam etz hasada. Now we'll understand what the Pasuk means when it says that the person is a tree of the field. Die Sach von Adam is etz hasada, and not, as we said in Sif Aleph, like we said in Sif Aleph, not that it means that the tree is a muscle for one of the aspects of the person. No, fakert. The person, you want to know what this person is? It's the tree. Because it is in the tree, in the part of the person that grows, that's tzomeach, which is his midos. That's where its source and its essence is expressed. And we can add to this, as the far is Iker Avedas Adam, Nita Zayin Inyan HaSeichel, nor Be'ikir in Bir V'Zichamidas, which is why the person's Aveda is primarily not so much in Seichel, but in refining and elevating or cleansing his Midas. Because when a person rectifies and elevates his Midas, this affects Pnimius HaNefesh. This touches the Pnimius HaNefesh. Because since the Midas are connected, are constantly connected with Pnimius HaNefesh, when you elevate those Midas, when you rectify those Midas, you're connecting them with, you're affecting the Pnimius HaNefesh. And therefore, where does a person reach his completion, state of perfection? The Avodah of Midas. So much so that not only is the person reaching a state of perfection when he fixes his Midas, but even when he engages in Seichel, how does Seichel reach its completion? The Pasuk says, you should know today, and you should place this on your heart. So we learned that V'yadaita is the knowledge of Hashem. Is the knowledge as it affects the person's Midas. So the Adaita is dependent on the Vashivesa. How do I know that I truly accomplished my seichel, my understanding of godliness? However, it affects the Midas. So from this we understand what it means. Really, what's the Adam? The H, the tree, the Midas. You want to know who is this person? What is this person? How do you define this person? Look at their midos. Because since the midos are intrinsically connected with the pnimius hanefesh, the midos convey and express the essence of this person. And now we can even understand better. We can better understand the passage in the Gemara. Und das ist was die Gemara is masber. This is what the Gemara is trying to say. As der Inyan von der Adam is asada git sich heraus in dem was in Talmud Chacham und Mimenu Teichel. That how do you understand? What does it mean? Adam is asada. It means that if it's a worthy Talmud Chacham, you can learn from him. Their Pirus von Hagun is what does the Gemara mean when it says Hagun, which I'm translating worthy? I'm sure there's other better English words for it, but let's say Hagun means worthy. What does it mean that he's a Hagun? As by dem Talmud Chacham is faran nit normal as a seichel. That by this Talmud Chacham he doesn't just have the advantage of seichel of limud that he learns, not as ein seichel bavir and midas, but that his seichel affects his midas. What does bring him to führen sich in a neifen von Hagun, which leads him to conduct himself in an appropriate, in a proper manner. Hagun, whether it means worthy, whether it means proper, what makes him a Hagun? A Hagun means that when he learns, the learning has an effect on his ma'asim. Talmud Chacham could be someone that learns, but it doesn't affect his ma'asim. Talmud Chacham Hagun means someone whose learning affects his ma'asim. Und davke von azal Talmud Chacham teichal. This is the type of Talmud Chacham from whom you should learn. Von him lernen und mekabel sein, from him you can receive, from him you could learn. Then he's been an Adam Mishlim, because when are you a complete person? From them one can learn, and from whom one can learn. When you're a tree, remember, even in Tzmeach Gufa, the tree is the most connected to its source. So when a person, his tzemeach, his midas, are as they should be, properly connected to the source and properly growing, then you know that this is a Talmud Chacham that you could be learned from. So that's the connection between what the Pasuk says. When the Gemara says Talmud Chacham Haganu, if you want to know if he's a good tree, you have to look at his midas. You have to look at his conduct, not just at his learning. And that's the pshat in Talmud Chacham and Talmud Chacham Haganu Mimenu Teichel. So with this, we have answered the questions. If you look back at the questions, the Gemara, the Rebbe asked, what does it mean? How does the Gemara's question, the Chiyad Meitz Sadahu, get answered? The answer is, Ha'adam Eitz Hasada, the person are his midos. Eitz Hasada is referring to the Tzemeach Shabbatim, which is the midos. And The second question, why are we comparing the Adam, the Medaber, with the fact that he's a Tzemeach? Because we're focusing on the Midah Sheba Adam, which are the Tzemeach Sheba Adam. We're not talking about, obviously we're using the word Eitz Asada, but it's not just Stamet Tzemeach, it's Tzemeach Sheba Adam. And therefore, it's not you're going down a level or two, you're actually looking at the Tzemeach within the person himself. In Siv Zayin, the Rebbe makes a similar structure instead of within the person connecting to its source, looking at it from a more general perspective, the Klal Yisrael as we connect to our source, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Just like every single person is connected to his midas, are connected to his pnimis hanefesh. Derech says it's going to get to close Am Yisrael. So too, with regards to the Yidden as a whole, that the way we reach our completion is by remaining connected to our origins and to our source. All Yidden originate from the three Avos, the three forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Das is in an Eifin, as ein ständig verbunden mit Chumrat Avos, and this is in a constant way, like we said about Tzemeach, that the Tzemeach is constantly connected. The Yidden are constantly connected to the Avos. Rashi says on the pasuk, I see him from the top of the mountains. Rashi says, I look at their origin, and at the beginning of their roots, and I see them, the Yidden, miyusadim, are grounded, are found, have a good foundation, and they are strong, al yedi avos v'imois, through the avos and the imois. So in other words, Yidden today, every single day, all the way throughout time, are constantly strong because they're constantly connected with the Avos. Where do you see this bond between the Yidden and the Avos? Not so much in our seichel, but more in our midas. As we know that the three Avos represent the three primary midas. Ava, Yira, and Rachmim. Avram is called Avram Oyavi. Avram is Chesed. That's the midah of Ava. Yira, Yitzchak is Pachad Yitzchak. Yitzchak was the Kava Gvura or Yira. And Yaakov is Tiferes, the midah that connects everything, which is Rachmim, which is called Kolamidus, which these three are the basic middos that include all the middos that come after them. And then ad olam, and they then passed on as an inheritance to their future generations forever. These very midos, and therefore their midos were given to us, and therefore they are connected to us. And every time and in every person, we have this intrinsic connection with the avos because they gave us those midos, and we have it within us. Was der Tam der Ruf is. Der Inyan Yerusha is verbunden mit dem Etzem von Meidish und Yerush, because the concept of Yerusha is connected with the essence of the inheritor and the heir. In other words, a person who's giving a Yerusha is not necessarily giving it to the other person because of their business acumen or because of something a favor that they've done for them. When a parent, when a moidish, when an inheritor gives something, it's because they're intrinsically connected, father and son, or a grandfather and a grandson, whatever the dynamics are. Und der Riber, das was die Avos haben übergegeben levnei macharei in Nefe von Yerusha. The fact that the Avos passed this down to their children in a manner of Yerusha is nicht as they verbunden mit their madrege and seichel vasagas to the kus. Not because of the fact that the Avos were on this very high level, very lofty level, and grasping alakus to dugma madreges Avram seichel nal nukolrayin. For example, Chassidus explains that Avram was on a very, very lofty level, the seichel that is higher than any form of comprehension. Because seichel is not an element within this intrinsic connection. You have a father and a son, for example. The connection between the father and son is not because the father has a lot of seichel and understands the greatness of the son. It's not because the son has a lot of seichel. Seichel is an add-on. The connection between the father and the son is much more intrinsic than a seichel connection of father and son. The fact that the Avos were moirish, they passed on to their descendants the Yerusha of the Midos is because of their Aveda in Midos. Because the Teva of their Midos is connected with their Pnimiyas HaNefesh, and therefore they pass down to their children something that was intrinsic, which is the midas. The seichel is not intrinsic, but the midas are intrinsic, and therefore the fact that the avos gave us their midas is because of the atzmiyistic connection that the midas have with them and that they have with us. So we have this within the individual person, that a person is rooted, his midos are rooted in his etzem and his pnimiyas hanefesh, and therefore midos actually express the essence of the person, and therefore when you fix your midos, you're fixing you're connecting to the essence of the person. You also have this as Yidden as a whole, that the avos, that we are constantly connected to the avos through the midos that they connected to us, because our connection is a connection of etzem, and therefore where is that connection expressed in midos? Sifches, we're going to learn a very beautiful, or actually two very beautiful herois lessons, practical lessons in our lives. One of the lessons that are very, very clear, that come out, that are to be learned from this idea. The source of chayes of a Yiddish Torah. Ki heim chayenu, as we say, Torah is our life. Aber der Seder Achayim von Bnei Adam is ausgestellt geworden al pi Torah in an Eufen, but the way we live our life, as is established by Torah, is in a way as Tidos Mu'minasam is mu'atimim. That those who learn 24/7 are a minority, and in general, those who are able to sit and learn, to be settled in the tent of Torah, is a minority compared to most people that are most people are not like the fish that are constantly inside of the source of their life. The way this Torah established the world, so the person has to go make a living, and therefore after he spends some time in yeshiva, he then goes out into the world, and that's where they fulfill their shlichus. To make a dwelling place for Hashem. So that's the reality. That the Makar HaChayis is Torah, and nevertheless, for many of us, we don't get to stay in the world of Torah our entire life. But here comes the lesson. We must remember, as a Adam Asada, that the person is a tree. Just like a tree is always connected to its roots, or its roots is always connected to the Koyach HaTzameach that's in the ground, a Yid, despite the fact that he's in the world working, has to constantly remain connected to the source of his life. Die Chayis in Teira und Mitzvahs, was bakumen zayin dik ba'ala shel Teira. He has to remain connected to the life source, to that energy that he received when he was young enough, and still when he was in the tent of Teira. Edis is gekommen die Zeit von Lirdorf, before the time came that he had to go pursue a career or a livelihood, but he had the opportunity to be able to sit and learn. Darf bei ihm bleiben ständig. That feeling of connectedness that he had when he was learning has to always remain by him. So much so that he feels that now he's still connected to that time. Das heißt, bei ihm darf nicht sein der Hergisch. A person should not feel as that amol gelernt in a cheder in yeshiva, that once upon a time he learned in a cheder in a yeshiva. Gedenkt iets was that amol gefühlt und getan, and now he's just remembering what. Let's do that again. Bei ihm darf nicht sein der Hergisch, als amol gelernt in a cheder yeshiva. A person shouldn't feel, oh, once upon a time I learned in cheder yeshiva. Gedenkt iets was amol gefühlt und getan, and now he's just remembering what he did or felt once upon a time. A person should, at this moment, should feel connected with that time. Bizer feel that das ist ein Chayes itzt. When in dem besteht a person should feel that what's my life source right now? That time that I was in yeshiva, the time that I sat and learned, the time that I was connected to Torah, that I felt connected to Torah. That is who I am. In dem besteht a mitzias. This is my mitzias. Who am I? I am the person that once upon a time sat and learned, and now I'm just doing my job because I have a shlichus to do to make the world a little bit tachtainim. But I'm still connected to that time. Uleidach. But on the other side, on the flip side, those who are still have the opportunity that they're sitting and learning, they have to know. As es ist nicht genug mit der Torah allein. It doesn't suffice just to learn Torah. Weil mit Seichel allein, was in ihm seine Dashinuyim, But because with Seichel alone, just to learn and to understand what you're learning, since Seichel is malleable, is nitakin for zicherung. There's no guarantee as that even after he goes out from the tent of Torah, you'll remain properly connected to Torah. But when you're learning, when you're still in the tent of Torah, and you're learning Torah, but you learn in a way of that it should affect your midas, it should affect your heart. Ver Torah angekritz dimension. That's how the Torah becomes carved into the person in a neifim von leishonisi in a way that it becomes unchangeable. And then, whatever situation he might be in, he remains connected to the source of the living waters. So to the person that's working, he has to remember what's the source. The source of life is Torah. And the person should remain connected to Torah. And not only that, but the way the Rabbi says it in the Sikha, a person should remain connected to that time that he was in yeshiva, that he was learning, and that should be the highlight of his life. Today that he's out there working, he has no choice, he's working, but he's connected to what? He's connected to the time that he learned in yeshiva. But at the same token, those who are in yeshiva have to know that learning alone is not enough. Learning has to affect the maisim, and therefore, even the way he lives his life, he should always be in a connected way to the source of life, but in a way that source affects the person in their daily life. And then, when a person is connected, then even when they go out into the world, that connection doesn't go away. That connection always remains connected to Torah and mitzvahs.